you were very unfortunately in a plane crash. This actually changed your whole approach to life and business.
We just all assume we're going to be fine. The reality is that we don't know what's going to happen next.
How many people are actually not living their lives the way that they really want to be because they're on some level feeling like they've got forever?
There's a lot of lawyers who are just running 1,000 miles an hour and they're not recognizing they're stuck.
You get to a point where maybe you're feeling depressed or maybe you're feeling really anxious. Sales is also a dirty word. Lawyers hate the idea of selling.
They never taught us this in law school.
Lawyers waste a lot of time actually reaching out to lots of different people, quite a lot of cold leads, when actually they've got hot ones sitting there.
It's hard to read the label from inside the bottle.
I know what I offer is great. I know I'm not for everyone.
Many people don't realize that you get one shot at this thing and that you really need to take advantage.
Most people assume they've got all the time in the world to build the career they want. Steve Fretzin didn't get that luxury. His wake-up call came at 6,000 feet when his plane lost its engine, dropped into darkness, flipped, and left him fighting to stay alive. Surviving that changed his whole perspective on life and ultimately propelled him to become one of the leading business development coaches for lawyers in the US. In this episode, he shares the mindset shifts and proven strategies to build a book of business and freedom before it's too late.
So Steve, I'm really so happy to have you here today because you have such an interesting business helping lawyers across the globe with their BD, building their businesses and lots more along with that. But also you have such an interesting life story because just a few years ago, you were very unfortunately in a plane crash and you talk quite openly about how this actually changed your whole approach to life and business.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm someone who, at a young age had some tragedy in my life. I was involved in a small plane crash in my mid-20s. The excitement of going up in a plane, the excitement of taking a trip, and never thinking for a moment that anything bad would happen, which is how we all live our lives, right? We just all assume we're going to be fine. We all assume we're going to not get hit by a car, that we're not going to we have like every day is there to live and there won't ever be anything in our way. The reality is that we don't know what's going to happen next. And so when you're 6,000 feet up in the air and you start to hear the plane that you're in make a sputtering noise, you start to get a little concerned. And so me and my, 5 other passengers heard that, sort of freaked out a little bit and looked at each other with some fear, as you can imagine. We got the engine back and everything seemed to be groovy for about 10 more minutes. And then guess what? The noise happened again. 10 o'clock at night, it starts raining. And basically we don't have an engine. It's just sputtering. And the pilot's freaking out to try to find a place to land. Everywhere around us just seems dark, like we're in forest. And he ultimately found a neighborhood to drop us into. And when I say drop us into, I don't mean like a lawn dart, but he did get us down to the ground and unfortunately didn't stick the landing. If he was a gymnast, it would not have been a 10. Because the plane wing clipped the curb and we ended up flipping upside down at 85, 90 miles an hour and shooting into a garage of a home. So the plane's torn apart. I'm knocked out. Everybody's, basically human pretzels. And it just was, I woke up to the most agonizing pain I had ever been in my life. My left arm, shoulder, and left leg were broken and dislocated over my body. Crushed ribs, smashed arm. And I remember them not only having to drag me out of the plane, but my girlfriend at the time who was with me was unconscious and I thought she might have been dead. And so I was screaming her name as I was being dragged out. So imagine the most traumatic experience you could ever have in your life and coming out the other end, not dead, which is where I should be dead. But I'm not. And I was put back together like Humpty Dumpty and all of that. And I don't think you can be the same after that. And if you are the same after that, then shame on you. You didn't take a gift of a life lesson. That is, this time that we have on this earth is precious. And if we're not utilizing it for our friends and our family and how we help others, then maybe what are we doing here anyway? And so that was a big leading point into my career in really taking care of others, even more with my mom and with my friends and with everybody in my life. They all know me as sort of someone who cares, and that's a caregiver to my community. And how I got into working with lawyers, that's another whole story. But ultimately, whatever I do, I take it incredibly seriously. Doesn't mean I don't want to have fun. No one enjoys fun more than me. But ultimately, I want to leave a legacy, and the legacy is helping others, with their lives and their careers, and their success becomes my success, and how I leave this place is better than I found it. So I think many people don't realize, that you get one shot at this thing, and that you really need to take advantage. And I hope that it doesn't take a cancer or a plane crash or any kind of bad accident for people to recognize how important it is to take this thing seriously and enjoy life and do your best, because you get one shot.
And I see so often with people that it seems they're just waiting for someday, whether it's in their career, whether it's pushing themselves to do the thing they really want to do, whether it's in a law context, reaching out to that client, whether it's actually going on that holiday they want to go on, whether it's spinning off and doing their own thing. And I wonder how many people are actually not living their lives the way that they really want to be, because they're on some level feeling like they've got forever, because that's how you feel, right? When nothing's happened to you like that.
And the other piece of it is, how we take care of ourselves. I think there's a lot of lawyers who are just running 1,000 miles an hour, and they're not recognizing not only they may not be accomplishing their goals in their life and their dreams and making things happen. They're feeling sort of like, a slave to the job or a slave to their family, or they're stuck in a service role or whatever the situation might be, where they're just not on breaking out. And they should understand that they're not alone, and that there are people like me and you and others who are here to support them and to try to help them out of their situation. And for someone that wants to break free and become a rainmaker, right, I'm a great person to talk with. Whether we work together or not doesn't really matter that much to me. I'd rather just be available. And if we want to work together, great, and we see there's a fit. Otherwise, I'll be a resource. If you need operations help, if you need technology help, if you need a different coach to work with that aligns better with what you're trying to do. And I think there are coaches for just about everything now, and the therapists and everybody else, but it's not getting the help and not asking for help and understanding there are people out there that will make you better. Than just trying to clench down your jaw and try to move forward every day without any kind of support. That's really where, and lawyers are perfectionists, and they're, I'll just do it. It's easier if I just do it myself. And I know that that's not healthy, and it's not necessarily what's going to work for most people.
I really hear that. And I think toxicity in law and also mental health issues in law are so systemic, and they're so normalized. I know from my own experience of having worked so many years, you're used to feeling burnt out. You're used to maybe being treated not very well. And you start to think, it can't be different for me. Haven't got the scope to do what I need or want to do in my career. And then you get to a point where maybe you're feeling depressed, or maybe you're feeling really anxious. Do you see this a lot in lawyers?
I see it all the time. And fortunately, the lawyers that come to me, they're in a place generally where they're ready to up their game and take things to the next level. And I have to work with them on delegation and automation and planning and knowing that they're going to invest their time wisely in things that are useful. However, sometimes they want to do everything that I just mentioned, but they're not in the right culture. They have a toxic boss. There's all kinds of things that are going on. And so I have to sort of shift my gears sometimes and say, hey, let's put the brakes on the business development for a moment. Let's try to find you a better home. And so whether it's referring to recruiters or leveraging my network, I just have a client recently has that exact situation, terrible boss and terrible culture, and wants him to focus in areas of law that he's totally unfamiliar with and uncomfortable with. And this is a brilliant trial attorney. So right away, I started thinking about who do I know in that state in the U.S. and who do I know in the cities that he works. And I've already got him an interview. He was like, oh, I know that firm. They're fantastic. I go, yeah, I know the managing partner, and here you go. Whatever I can do to try to help someone get out of a situation and again, make themselves happy and successful in their career. I think we all have to step up and just be as useful as possible to others in need. And there's so much need out there, to your point, Helen, that we all have to figure out how to be a resource.
And so imagining that I'm a lawyer out there and I contact you right now, Steve, and I say, I'm really not happy in what I'm doing. I'm not particularly happy in my firm. I've got a really toxic boss. Yeah. I'm maybe struggling to grow my client base. I'm struggling with direction. What do you say to me right now?
If it's something, manageable where you can stay in place for a period of time to focus on building your book of business, focus on building your law practice, to help you to become more portable, really to be able to, in a position where other law firms find you attractive. Because if you don't have your own client base, it's in the US at least, it's very difficult to move right now. You need about $500,000 to $1 million to be able to really move your law practice to some other firm. And if you're under there and they have a desperate need, then maybe you'll be lucky. But if we can stick it out and we can build a book of business where you are, great. If not, then we have to, start bringing in recruiters. We need to start thinking about your brand and figuring out how to get you in the door. And so, teaching networking skills about how to leverage inside connections, for example, to get interviews with law firms that are of interest versus sending out resumes blindly or just, email, marketing to try to get in the door. That's just not going to work. We need inside connections. And so my thought would be, can we stick it out here? If not, then how do we approach trying to leverage the relationships you do have to get inside connections to firms that might be a better fit, better culture?
And I don't know if you see this in the US, but particularly in the UK and across the globe that I see is that lawyers are trained to be really technically good or technically excellent. They build these skills, they go a few years into their career, and then they realize that actually they need this whole other skill set around BD. So actually they can be really qualified, really great lawyers, but they haven't got that client base. And you touched into networking there, which I think is so, so key. What do you say to those lawyers? What do they need to upskill on? What are the most valuable things to them at that point?
Well, let me address the line that I hear every day, which is, they never taught us this in law school. And so I'm assuming that that's what you're talking about. And so these are lawyers who aren't really understanding from day one. And I speak to law school students, this year, multiple schools each year, and they are still deer in the headlights. They have no idea what's coming their way. That, yes, you need to become an amazing practitioner and you need to be technically sound. Those are table stakes. That's the basics of what it takes to be successful as a lawyer today. Even in-house lawyers, don't think they need to do business development. They absolutely do. And one of those skills that we need to talk about is relationship building, developing trust, and that happens through networking. So in-house, in private practice, whatever the case might be, it should start in law school. Look to your left, look to your right. Not to see who's going to still be here in a year. That's an old saying, but it's who's going to be a GC, who's going to be a CEO, who's going to be at a law firm where you could network and possibly find some referrals that you can send and that you can get. And so networking is a skill that is learned. There are people who are introverted. There are people who are extroverted. It doesn't matter. We all need to develop and hone that skill because it's ultimately going to be what's going to help us develop and grow a successful law practice. And so developing a plan, understanding who your targets are from a standpoint of who's valuable for you to meet, meeting someone that is, a first-year insurance salesman may be quite different than leveraging your network to meet lawyers that are highly sophisticated that don't do what you do and could refer you the stuff that they don't do. Right? So we need to think about who we're meeting with, and then how are we running those meetings? How are we developing that relationship? How are we developing a network wide enough where we are in a position to help others? I think one of the big concerns for lawyers and networking is they don't know anyone. Well, you have to get out there and be active and meet a bunch of people in different industries, CPAs, financial planners, CFO, interim CFO, whatever different industries that you need to meet so that when you have a new relationship, you can move pieces around on the board like a chess game without realizing you don't have any pieces on the board. So that's where networking comes in. And I spend a lot of time teaching the intricacies of language and process within networking to ensure people get the most out of their time, because otherwise it can be a tremendous waste of time. I know people spending 200 to 400 hours a year on networking and getting very little from it, attending conferences and doing all kinds of things, joining associations, and they have very little to show for it. Maybe they've built it out wide, but they have yet to figure out how to build it deep and drive referrals and business into their law practice, and that's really the goal.
Just pausing for a second to ask a small favour. This is a brand new podcast, and every follow, review, or share helps more than you know. It means I can create more episodes, bring on more top guests and thought leaders, and share the secret lessons and tools
that help you build influence, find purpose, and create a career and life you actually jump out of bed for. If that speaks to you, please hit subscribe. It really does make a difference. Now, back to the episode.
So I really love this because what I see so often is that lawyers have an idea, even lawyers with books of business that are several £1,000,000 in value, but actually they don't have a real strategic game plan. And they waste a lot of time actually reaching out to lots of different people, quite a lot of cold leads, when actually they've got hot ones sitting there and actually ones that could be converted. If you were talking to a lawyer right now, what would be your top 3 tips for actually building out that strategic plan and creating that plan that actually converts?
Let me take a step back and then we'll take a step forward. One of the things that's very challenging for me as a business owner sometimes and for lawyers in their world is that, and this is an old saying, but it's hard to read the label from inside the bottle. So many lawyers have millions of dollars piled up on a table in front of them and they're walking around it all the time because they don't really understand where the low-hanging fruit and where the opportunity might be. They have, 50, 100 amazing clients that love them and they haven't leveraged them properly for business introductions and things like that. They just don't know how. It's not comfortable, and I totally get that. So what I do when I meet a lawyer is I evaluate what they're doing really well, but I also ask questions to identify where their gaps are. And that's where the growth is. The growth is in the gaps. And so the identification of those gaps and where they should be spending their time is the first step. Okay, so we do that. Then when we decide to work together, then we've got some other things that need to happen. And one of the most important things lawyers should be doing, whether they engage someone like myself or anyone or not at all, is to consider that. And this goes back to the beginning of our conversation. Now, you were not trained to be a client developer. This is not in your education. So you need to take it upon yourself to be what I call a student of the game of business development, the game of personal branding, the game of networking, whatever we need, time management, mastery, whatever we want to call it. The best analogy I have is like, I'm not a lawyer, but I've decided that I'm going to go in and handle a murder trial, right? Because I've seen My Cousin Vinny, and I've seen some Law and Order episodes and all the TV shows. So I should be fine, right? Well, no, I'm going to get destroyed in court. All right. And the judge is going to throw me out. Lawyers that are excellent at lawyering, but they're not necessarily good at business. Well, you haven't studied it. You haven't gone to school for it. So I would say reading books, watching videos, listening to podcasts. You got time in the car. You have time on the train. You have time walking the dog, whatever it is. That should be what you're listening to and what you're watching and paying attention to, because that's going to directly impact your career, your money, your control, your freedom, all the things that lawyers want, your stress level, bring it down. When you have a big book of business, generally speaking, you take off time. You recharge the battery. You have control of your career and the decisions you make, who you hire and delegate to. If you are a service partner where you have 3 people sending you the hours, and then you've got 10 clients you're working on, everyone's telling you what to do, evenings, weekends, you have no control. You have no say. You just have to do what you're told. That's not necessarily a great career trajectory, right? And it might feel okay at 35. I work with a lot of 50-somethings. It's not okay at 50-something. And that's where they end up if they don't start taking the student of the game play seriously today. So I would say, planning is an important step, and really understanding that you have to plan and plot out how you're going to spend your time. I would also suggest, again, having processes and systems in place to do business development. I'll give you a quick example. A lot of lawyers go out and they do what are called, in the US at least, they call them pitch meetings. I hate it because they're basically saying I have to go out and I have to go sell myself, or I have to go tout my impressive background or firm, and I'm going to be just basically providing free consulting to demonstrate how smart I am. And it's absolutely backwards to what every lawyer should be doing, right? It should be the entire meeting with a prospective client should be about them, their problems, their needs, and what are you able to find out that drives urgency for them to want to engage you. So these are soft skills, and they don't have to be salesy. It's actually the opposite. I teach sales-free selling to give you an idea. I mean, that's how far away from selling I want my clients to be. And I think that fits really well with how they want to feel in the business development world is non-salesy. So there's a lot of moving parts, Helen, so it's hard to sort of unpack it all in answering one question.
I totally get that. I mean, there's so much richness in this. And in terms of this non-salesy selling, I know in law, sales is also a dirty word. Lawyers hate the idea of selling.
Hate it.
How do
Hate
we
it.
do this non-salesy selling?
We need to stop thinking about selling, pitching, and convincing, free consulting, answering questions, and really being under the control of the prospective client. What questions can I answer for you today? Like, that should never come out of a lawyer's mouth. The process I teach sales-free selling is, obviously you need to do all the work to get in front of a prospective client that has a need. But once you do, it should really, again, it should not feel salesy. It should feel like a conversation that walks a buyer through a buying decision to understand, is there a fit and is there a potential win-win outcome? And if the answer is no, be okay with it. Don't feel like you have to shove a round hole in a square peg. Let's figure out, and it will be a fit most of the time, but wouldn't you want to know that it's a fit and why, and get them to say, how do we get started together? Or would you want to try to convince them to work with you, right? That's not fun. Being sold to isn't fun. That's not interesting, and it's not helpful. So I'd rather someone believe that I'm an expert based on the level and quality of my questions, my ability to listen and understand and demonstrate empathy, and believe that I'm an expert versus me telling them I'm an expert and providing free consulting that gives them the ability to say, thank you very much, sir. Goodbye. I'm going to go do that with my other lawyer, which happens, right? So sales-free selling, developing a strong relationship, doing your research, being prepared for the meeting, taking control of the meeting in a friendly way through the form of a game plan, establishing a game plan, the rules of engagement of how this is going to go. By the way, part of that is making the entire engagement about the prospective client, not about me. So getting them to agree that me asking questions and them answering questions is an important part of our meeting today. They agree to that. And then we spend really the most of our time after that asking questions, listening, learning. And here's a really big word that lawyers don't know about: qualifying. Are they qualified in that they have compelling reasons to change? Are they qualified in that they're committed to take action? Are they qualified in that you're dealing with the actual decision maker or someone there to collect information? That's a very different meeting. And people lose business all the time because they don't ask the question about who you're meeting with. Even if it says big shot CEO on the t-shirt, doesn't necessarily mean that they have full reign to sign up with you. So decision maker. And then the last one is financial. Do they have the willingness and the ability to invest in you as their lawyer? So we go through the meeting without asking questions and without qualifying, and we wonder why we get ghosted at the end, right? When they say, this sounds very interesting, let me get back to you. And you think it's great, and it's not. And there are lawyers chasing after business all the time. That's never going to come back because they didn't have a sophisticated yet simple process to follow that allows them to understand everything that's going on. And here's the big word I'll give you. And lawyers love this. Once they get it down, they get the truth. And it's the lies and it's the things that aren't said in a meeting that end up killing the deal. But when you can get everything on the table and get the truth and get everything out and laid out and be honest with each other to identify that fit, it takes away all the salesiness. And it's like, hey, it's a great way to start a new relationship because there was no sales involved. It's like a whole new way of thinking for lawyers. But once they get that down, it's like this huge weight lifted from their shoulders because they don't have to sell anymore. They just know that this is how they're going to run a meeting to develop the strongest possible relationship and belief possible and let the client buy. We don't have to sell. And that's a beautiful thing when we can make that happen.
And that's beautiful, isn't it? Because it comes from having a really high level of confidence in yourself. I speak to a lot of lawyers who are actually really afraid of rejection in this context. So They don't put themselves forward. They don't ask the difficult questions. They don't seek clarity from the outset. They don't manage expectations. And I think there's something about having that mindset of, you know what, I know why I'm here. I know what I offer is great. I know I'm not for everyone. And actually, let's see if this is the right fit. And by the way, I might decide it's not the right fit as the lawyer.
100%. In fact, I'll give you a line that I teach my clients that is such a winner line, because what we want to do, we're dealing with CEOs of multi-billion dollar, $1 million, whatever, they're big shots and we're not. No, that's not the case. The way it should be is a level playing field. So I teach my clients to say not only the word fit, that we need to agree this is a fit, and get them to say, yes, I agree with that. So level playing field. At the end of the game plan that I have them establish near the beginning of the meeting, This is what I teach them to say something like this. And again, if it sounds uncomfortable, it's because it's new. New is uncomfortable. But this takes away a lot of the stress out of a meeting, and it gets to the truth. And that's what we really want. So we get agreement on this. So Helen, at the end of our meeting today, one of a couple things will probably happen. If we feel that there's a great fit here, a great synergy, and we want to keep talking and moving this forward, let's agree to that at the end of our meeting today. No problem. On the other hand, if you or I don't feel this is a fit, let's just be straight with each other. Let's call it a day. And again, I'll try to be a resource for you, but can we agree that one of those two outcomes makes sense? You say yes. Now we have agreement that we're either moving forward or we're moving it to a no. And people freak out that it's a no. No is the second best thing you can get to at the end of a meeting, because, and I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, and I know in some areas like Japan, they will use a thing like, that sounds difficult, right? That's their blow off for not moving forward. In the US, it's, this sounds great. Let me think about it. As soon as you hear, let me think about it, I can tell you 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 times, this deal is not going through, because that is the ultimate blow off. I'll get back to you. I'll think about it, maybe, whatever. That's all bad. Moving someone to a next step, a yes, or moving someone to a no, and knowing why, because you have all this information, why they're a no. All right. They don't have the money to pay you, right? They're not the decision maker, and the decision maker will never meet with you, whatever it might be. You know what's going on. It's okay to move someone to a no or a no for now, because you've actually qualified or disqualified the fit. And so that setting that up at the beginning releases the sales valve, but it also sets us up to be super successful, to not have to chase after people, which is where lawyers waste a lot of time, is chasing after things that they think are going to go forward, but they're not.
And what helps someone have the confidence to state that at the beginning of the meeting, to take charge, to say it's okay if it's a no?
Yeah, it's committing to a process that has been proven to work, and practicing and honing the language and the steps. And that's what I do. I teach a class. I've got lawyers from around the world that come to this class to learn these skills. They learn the skill. They practice the skill in a safe environment with other lawyers. They get the words out, and it makes it more comfortable to try it than when you're in the situation. And here's the best part. When they try it in the situation, I get them to say, hey, just to commit to doing it. Just commit to trying it. And what lawyers love is proof and evidence. So as soon as they do it and they get the words out and the buyer goes like this, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. And it raises their level of professionalism. They get buy-in from the prospective client. The meeting runs in a way where it's not about them. It's about the prospective client. And that evidence and proof drives their confidence and drives their belief that following steps that have been proven to work, that work for them now, is something that they're going to do for the rest of their career. I have to do that with some of my steps, not because they're salesy, but because they're new. And things that are new are scary. And so we need to be prepared that doing something new is going to be challenging. Once you get over to the other side of it, though, and you realize how much time it saves you and how much money it makes you and how much happier you are and how less salesy you feel following a system that's proven, everything changes and the buy-in becomes undeniable, which is then we're off to the races and we're really in a good place.
So it sounds like the strategy, the mindset, the plan, your whole outlook around this is actually really key to your success here.
Yeah. The mindset has to mirror and match what the system is telling you to do. If the mindset and the system align, which they do, which is make this all about them. Like, this isn't about you. My coaching and how the revenue that I make, it has nothing to do with my success. My success is all about the lawyers I work with and their success. And we need to think as lawyers, we can't help someone be successful in their business and their life if we can't get them as a client, right? We're the top brain surgeon and we need patients to work on in order to save lives. We need to have that positive mentality that we're great lawyers. The more people we can help, the better, but we need to lock them up in a way that feels really good and that's highly successful. It's like if I went to a casino and I don't know anything about how to count cards and I can win blackjack at, 45 to 50%, that's fine. But if I had a system and I'm able to win blackjack at 80%, well, I'd certainly be thrilled about going to the casino more often, right? Because I know what the outcome is going to be. We have a system for how we dry off after a shower, but we don't have a system for how we grow our businesses and save time. Somebody explain that to me.
And I love that at the centre of all of this is this philosophy of helping others. And I know that runs so deep with you for the reasons we've discussed. And I feel like, particularly with lawyers, people are often thinking quite short term in terms of, I need clients, I need money. But actually what you're talking about is a much longer term philosophy, which is, maybe we have a chat now, maybe we're not a fit now, but maybe you know someone who's a fit, or maybe I can help you in a way. Maybe you come back in 5 years. And I always think of it a little bit like farming. It's like you've got to tend to the soil, look after it. You've got to help people. You've got to be a good guy. And if you do all of that, then it's sort of trusting in the process that the right things will follow, and the things that are right for you at that point will come to you with this plan and with this strategy.
I mean, there's not to say you can't get some immediate relief and get some immediate business, because we can tap into past and existing clients for business. We can talk about cross-marketing internally with your firm and how to develop more business quickly there. So there are some fast hits that can happen. But to your point, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the clients that I worked with 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I have them in my Rainmaker Roundtables where I see them every month. I met with one of my groups yesterday, and we share the quarterly goals and how we're doing for the year. Across the board, everyone is having their best year they've ever had. So is that economic? I think to some degree, maybe. But more than that, it's that they are thinking business development every day, every week, every month, and how they're going to build and do better than the last year. And they have systems and processes and language to do that, where other lawyers just don't. And so they're going to be in a much better position to grow and win the marathon every year, versus, again, just, things going up and down like a roller coaster.
I love that. We get rid of the roller coaster, we bring a bit more certainty, a bit more strategy. And it sounds like you're offering some amazing support there in what you do. In terms of where people can find you, how can people reach out? Where's the best place?
I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn. You can go to Steve Fretzin. My website is bethatlawyer.com, podcast Be That Lawyer, and also a podcast called Future Rainmakers. You can always email me at steve@fretzin.com for a direct, connection to talk. Again, I really believe strongly that if a lawyer reaches out to me and we take 30 minutes together, we either figure out that there's a fit, or we figure out that there's other ways and resources that I can provide. And I'm always happy to take those meetings.
Thanks for listening to Lawyer Unleashed and for being a part of this community. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend who you think would benefit. And just FYI, this conversation is off the record.